fury and resignation around the world as Trump's travel ban comes roaring back. Yeah, Trump's travel ban is probably popular, okay? This after Trump cried national security and terrorism concerns in banning nationals largely from Africa and Asia, the reaction of those countries ranged from weariness to anger. Don't know, don't care. One of the areas where Trump is largely successful in terms of his approval rating is immigration. Most people in this country are concerned about the terror attacks. We just saw one with this crazy guy in Boulder, Colorado. And conservatives have been warning about this forever. Joe Biden's open border policy, and not just physically at the border, but granting temporary protected status to people who are overstaying visas. This was creating a security risk where we were not vetting whether some people were extremists. And now what do we get? An extremist literally attacked a bunch of people, elderly people with Molotov cocktails. So Trump says, okay, we're going to ban travel from these countries and restrict from these other countries. What are we getting? Liberals are feigning outrage. Good luck, I guess. This is a popular position. Where will we end up? Honestly, I think the reality is it's just going to keep working out for Donald Trump. This is going to help bolster his approval rating. It makes him look like he's actually addressing issues people are concerned about. And the Democrats are once again defending the bad guys on these issues. Now, we're going to be joined, of course, by, I believe we've got Rich Lowry joining us. So let me pull this up, make sure I get the audio squared away and loaded. Looks like we are loaded up. It's looking good. And Rich, can you hear me?
Yeah, I gotcha.
All right. How's it going, man? How you doing?
Not too bad. You? I understand the Daily Show just went after you.
Yeah, the Daily Show did. They pulled clips from like 10 years. I'm not kidding. They have a clip of me from when I think I was like 28. And, I was doing like a Patreon video for like 3,000 people. Absolutely wild. But hey, I must be doing something right, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I first came across you when you were wandering around with the mic and all these protests.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing they tried doing. They took a clip of me where I said, I'm on the ground bringing the news to you, which is 9 years ago, and then likening it to my show now, which is more produced podcast stuff.
Right.
But do you want to give people a quick introduction of the work that you do before we get started?
Yeah, sure. Rich Lowry, editor-in-chief, National Review magazine, columnist, write a syndicated column, appears very often in the New York Post.
I'm curious, the big issue that I was talking about just now is Karine Jean-Pierre's quitting the Democratic Party. The party seems to be in free fall. They're not popular. Their brand is bad. And I'm kind of bored of it. At this point, It's been predicted. We've watched. Everybody knows. Right. But I'm curious your assessment on what you've been seeing.
Well, look, I mean, this is absurd, right? She was in on the conspiracy, right? Tapper's book says the press people, they weren't on, major insiders, but I wasn't an insider. You weren't an insider. We knew what was happening, right? You could see it with your own eyes. It was the worst executed conspiracy in the history of America because no one believed the conspirators. Doesn't mean they still weren't hiding stuff, right? And it wasn't shameful what they were doing or trying to do. I mean, the basic playbook was to gaslight everyone until the election, hope he wins, and have him die or become senile in office and say, well, here we go. Kamala Harris is president of the United States. A shameful conspiracy against the American public and the American public interest. This was a terrible thing, having a president who wasn't up for it and was just going to get more not up for it as time went on, and have someone who wasn't elected take over. It would have been terrible for the country. And she was the front woman for this conspiracy. So I have a lot of time for conversions. If she wants to write a book saying, dear God, I regret what I did. This is why I did it. I now realize it was wrong. I hate the people who convinced me to do this. George Stephanopoulos sort of wrote a memoir like that after his time with Bill Clinton. But to do this, to say politics is broken when you had a huge role in breaking it and aren't going to acknowledge it, it's absurd and shameful.
I mean, we're seeing this from a bunch of news organizations as well. I mean, Jake Tapper, of course. How could anyone have missed this? Is that you were on TV every night claiming that people were mocking his stutter, that he was well.
Yeah. It drives me nuts. And kind of the epicenter of it was that George Clooney fundraiser in Hollywood, right? One, they had to have Obama because they had to have like a real live person on stage with Biden. So at least half the presenters were with it. We all pointed that out at the time. And then Biden clearly froze up on the stage doing a wave. We have never seen a normal president of the United States just freeze And then he has to get guided off stage by Barack Obama, which we've also never seen that happen with another president. And Obama, whatever else you think about him, has some physical grace. So he's able to pull it off very well. But those are 3 data points. We all knew him. We all saw him. And they lied to us. They tried to lie to us about what we were seeing with our own eyes. And everyone there at the fundraiser knew it. Turns out George Clooney, shocked at Biden's state. Biden doesn't recognize him. John Favreau, I think it is, I get the Obama bros confused, said everyone in the room shocked. His wife said, what are we going to do? How possibly is this going to work? It's like, I don't know. And everyone at their table had the same conversation. And they told us we were crazy when he said when we said he froze up and we saw it on camera and something's wrong. And then only after the debate, when it became convenient, then they're like, oh, yeah, this is what we saw. This is what was going on. Well, thanks a lot, guys.
One of my favorite tweets, X post, whatever, was there's that Trump reply guy. I'm not going to say his name, but he tweets, Joe Biden's going to run on stage, grab a water bottle, chug it, slam it on the table and say, sup, bitch. And then after the debate, he said, what did I just watch? Yeah. And I feel like, I think there's a lot of older people who are just watching, say, like CNN or MSNBC that lived in that narrative reality, and then they saw the truth. But I guess the issue now is we're in the Trump era. Trump's popularity is growing, despite the fact the polls seemingly make no sense because some have him -11 and some have him +13, which is weird. Yeah. Well, as long as we look at the aggregate, he's at -2.3 right now, which is really good. Even YouGov has him slowly improving, and they call this the slow return of Trump's popularity. The Democratic brand is tarnished. People think there are no strong leaders. KGP quits the party. Many others, I mean, we can rag on, Axios or CNN or these other outlets that claimed they couldn't tell that Biden was sick. But either way, people are waking up and they're losing confidence in that party. And once party loyalists are turning their back, what do you have a prediction of where this goes into 2026 or what happens to the Democratic Party?
So I think the advantage they have, Tim, is that in a midterm election, when the other party controls all elected branches of Washington, you usually do well no matter what. I emphasize the no matter what. So that's what they have to go on, is no matter what, they'll probably take the House, right? It's hard to imagine they won't pick up 2 or 3 net seats. That's just not a lot in historic terms, and they can probably do that without having figured anything out and being as pathetic as they are now. Even though Trump's approval rating is ticking back up, to my surprise, after the tariffs first came out, polls went down. I was like, now he's in a different phase, but he's ticked back up to his credit. Then they got to figure it out in 28, right? That's the big question, because you need someone who's compelling, who's interesting, who's different, who has a different theory of the case. No one wins the presidency by running the conventional playbook, whether it was Obama or Trump. Maybe Biden's a slight exception in 2020, but a lot of other stuff was going on, confounding variables in 2020. And they need someone who just seems reasonable, right? Who's not into this woke stuff, who can say, no, boys shouldn't compete against girls in sports. And yes, we should have a sealed border and all the rest of it. But can they do that? Will they do that? That I don't know. And that's the huge, huge question facing them.
Well, I think, like you were mentioning early on, The Daily Show made a video about me, and it's just like, why? Do they really? They have nothing on their side in terms of media and personality to promote. I think that, the reason I bring that up is I consider myself still to be like a traditional liberal, and growing up, as much as liberals, conservatives disagreed, we all got along. I mean, my parents were liberal and conservative, but it wasn't that big of a difference. Now you have this very stark divide. And I think the issue they're taking, probably why they rag on me, is because you've got Tulsi Gabbard, you've got RFK Jr., you've got Elon Musk, you got Donald Trump himself, you got people like me and all of those other people who consider themselves to be liberal, but now we're like, I'll take Trump because y'all are nuts.
Right. If
they're going to rebuild brand while people are quitting the party, they have to make a case for why people like me are wrong and the party is good. Yeah. Or not just me, but like Tulsi, who they've gone after for years. I just don't know how they convince a new generation to attach themselves to a brand that doesn't have any genuine personality or policy or anything like that.
Yeah, so you know the stick figure diagram for this phenomenon, right? I think Colin Wright came up
Yep.
with it
Yeah.
on X, right? And Elon promote. You're the stick figure, right? You're the stick figure. You're someone who's in the middle of the two parties, broadly conceived, and then the Democrats go way to the left, and wait a minute, now you're right of center. How did that happen? Because they went crazy. You're part of this phenomenon. Glenn Greenwald, Elon, Bill Maher. Now, Maher's never going to be pro-Trump. He's changed his tune a little bit, or his tone, since that meeting in the White House. But people who realize the left has gone insane, and also just reject this the legacy media, the way it controls information, the way it attacks dissent. Right? We're talking about it right now.
Yep.
There's a reason they're going after you, and have a more liberal attitude towards debate and discussion, and think it should be more freewheeling. So now you guys are with us over on the right, but it's not really your doing. It wasn't something you set out deliberately to do. The whole context and environment change.
But they're inauthentic, right? So there was this article. I think it was I don't know, it might have been Newsweek, or no, I think it was Politico. The centrist Democrats are trying to take control of the party, make their case. The problem is these quote unquote centrist Democrats are still inauthentic, fake people.
Right.
You parade them out, and it's like, listen, you lied to us about Joe Biden. You are party loyalists. You are not centrists. I don't see how they find a charismatic leader who's going to attract. Look, let's be real. There is nobody on the Democratic side who right now could convince me to vote for a Democrat. Mm-hmm. Who else are they going to try and get?
Yeah. So what they try to do, maybe 3 out of the last 3 times, certainly 2 out of the last 3 times, was control the process, right? So no one serious could run against Hillary. They didn't consider Bernie serious. He ended up being much more serious than they thought in 2016. But the deck was stacked in Hillary Clinton's favor. And she was just a terrible person. If you're going to stack the deck for someone, don't do it for her. 2020, they stack it for Biden, kind of. I mean, it was a competitive process, and he lost the first couple primaries and actually seemed dead in the water. Comes back, he works for them. But in 2024, no one could run against him, right? It was stacked in the favor of an old senile man with approval ratings of 40% or below. A disastrous choice. And then they don't have time, or they didn't want to do it. Thought it was too risky for an open process to be his replacement. So they choose poorly yet again. And the thing is, if you actually have an open process, you got to go out, you got to connect with voters, and unpredictable things happen, and voters value authenticity. Yeah. The party's establishment does not necessarily value authenticity. Hillary wasn't authentic, Kamala wasn't authentic, but voters do. So that's why you get Trump, right? He comes in 2016, total interloper, total outsider, finds something that other Republicans aren't on to, and he's totally real, right? And we saw the power of this in 24 with going on podcasts. Doesn't need a script, doesn't need to prepare beforehand, doesn't need the questions to be fed to him. He can just go on and be himself. McDonald's, yeah. He can go to the takeout window, wear his suit, and just throw a McDonald's apron over it and be himself, and it works. So that's what happens when you have small d Democratic politics, but the Democratic Party short-circuited that several times now to their own detriment.
I think all they have, this is funny, is all they have is Orange Man Bad. Do you choose the meme? With Trump's approval rating increasing, this likely indicates that regular voters are looking at what he's doing and they like what he's doing, especially on immigration. What ends up happening is these liberal personalities, they don't actually have a fact basis by which to oppose Trump. So let's take a look at, he just did this travel ban, 12 countries. What is the logical argument to say that what he did was egregious and wrong? Now, you might argue maybe it's bad for relations with that country, but what we end up seeing is these liberals, these personalities come out and act like Trump is literally Hitler for doing this. I think regular people are going to look at it and they're going to be like, I honestly don't care. Yeah. So all they're proposing is whatever Trump does, it's bad. But what happens to a party when people actually like what Trump is doing? Yeah.
So on the travel ban, people tend to forget he got dinged the first 2 times with his travel ban the first term on process grounds. Then when they fixed it, the third time they go up to the Supreme Court and they win, right? And they've taken on board the information how it went the first time. This one is going to be, I haven't looked at it closely, but I expect it'll be more carefully done, is going to withstand court challenge ultimately. It'll prevail in the Supreme Court, whatever a crazy district court judge does. And yeah, it can affect your relations with these countries, but how much relationship do we have with Somalia or Afghanistan or with Haiti? And I think the White House fact sheet was very compelling. If you have visa overstay rates from these countries 50% or above, you're just letting them in. If you give them a visa, you're just letting them come in the United States and stay forevermore. Now, if we want to do that, fine. Congress can pass a law saying everyone in Haiti gets to come, and they stay forever. But we don't have that law. That law wouldn't make sense, and that's what we're not going to do that. So it's fine letting Canadians in because they're by and large they're going to go home. But you let in someone from Afghanistan. I have a lot of sympathy for Afghans. Have lived a nightmare, hellish nightmare for decades, but they're going to stay. So that's a mockery of the visa program, and that's why it makes sense to cut it off.
And so my point is largely the only argument against it is a light maybe, right? Like I mentioned, maybe it's bad for relations. That's still not a strong argument against the national security interest Trump has brought up. With immigration being basically his number one issue, you need to convince voters to vote against those policies. The only thing they do is say, oh, well, Trump's a fascist. It's like, give me a policy. They don't have anything.
Right. Yeah, this is something, immigration, that largely, if they're just considering their own political interest, Democrats, they should just concede on. They should say, yeah, Biden had a de facto open border that was very bad for our country, bad for big cities and big city mayors. A lot of them were complaining at the time. Never should have happened. The border is now sealed. Good. Let's keep it that way. It's bad for gang members to be in here. Let's get every single one of them out of here and make sure there's no policy that lets them in ever again. People overstaying visas is wrong. It's illegal. If it's just a conduit for visa overstays for this country, let's shut it down from this country. And then you can argue about the kind of legal immigration we can have, or maybe an amnesty for people who've been here a long time. But they have no credibility on immigration. So even when they advance a view that I probably disagree with, but is reasonable, most people are just going to figure, oh, there they go again. They're in favor of illegal immigrants.
Right. What's funny is I think that their only actual path towards victory would be to bring a person up there, on the stage and just says, yeah, Trump's right about everything. He's just kind of a dick. And then people would you're going to capture here's the problem. It is unreasonable to hate Trump. Unreasonably. I mean, I do not see a logical argument for hating Donald Trump. I can understand someone saying I disagree with him. I can understand when libertarians are like, look, his policy here is bad and I don't like this. But you don't hate him. So the challenge for Democrats is going to be, how do you even try to say Trump is right about immigration without also irrationally hating the guy and sounding like you're just inauthentic?
Yeah, so I would say he does genuinely offend a lot of people. So I think that the strategy of calling him a dick and saying he's in favor of the rich no matter what he says would make much more sense than what they're doing now, which there's just still the holding to the left. I mean, there's just been little signs, right? Occasionally you'll get some senator on Meet the Press saying, oh, yeah, Biden shouldn't have done that at the border. You get Gavin on his podcast saying, it's not fair for guys to compete against girls. But these are just real small concessions. Or with the Biden stuff we started talking about with KJP, they'll say, yeah, I should have dropped out sooner. But none of them will just actually rip the Band-Aid off and tell the truth about these issues and get in a much more reasonable place. And if they wanted to, take immigration again, for example, the ACLU, all these pressure groups would viciously attack them and call them racist, right? We're used to being called names like that, but by such organizations, right? You probably encounter it every single day. They're not. It freaks them out. They can't handle it. And that's why they end up kowtowing to the positions of these folks, even if they don't agree with them themselves, or truth serum would say, maybe we shouldn't do this. They're too scared to break with them.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it. I wonder if the issue for Democrats was that there's a huge bifurcation between generations in how they consumed media and how they viewed the world. So they're trying to balance this old school establishment kind of Democratic Party, which is, say, the Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi, with this new progressive AOC type, but they hate each other. Mm-hmm. So you try and bring policies forward that the American people largely like. Let's say, 2-1, restrict the border. The younger generation is pro-open borders. We had Nick Shirley's this reporter in Minneapolis. The FBI was doing a drug raid, or I think it was a human trafficking and drug bust. and leftist protesters were trying to obstruct the arrest. Now, if you go on a debate stage and say, we're going to support our FBI as they stop these human traffickers, almost everyone's going to agree. And then the weirdo progressive left are going to be like, boo. If the Democrats try to go the moderate route, I feel like they'll lose 8 to 10% of the vote and they can't win.
That's so let me ask you, Tim. So on authenticity, you're a good judge of this. Do you consider AOC authentic?
No way.
Why not?
Well, when she first ran, she was very much in the, pro Hamas. I'm sorry, that's a little harsh. The pro-Palestine side, anti-Israel side. And then once she gets elected, she goes, actually, I don't know a whole lot about it. Instantly gets caught up on that. She also lied about January 6th. What I would say is, if you don't actually follow the news, you might consider her to be more authentic just because she's a better personality. But for someone who follows the news, you're like, she's full of it. She's just lying, which to be fair is a lot of politicians, but she comes off as less plastic than most of the Democrats, but still fairly plastic.
Yeah. So again, my take is they need to have an open process, and they need to be open to someone coming in and disrupting it who they don't know or they're not comfortable with. Again, this happened with Republicans in 2016. That's how you get something new. That's how you get something authentic. That's how you get maybe someone who figures out some of these issues we're talking about. But if the establishment keeps controlling it the way they have, it's going to be continued futility.
I don't think there is a single Democrat who could actually run 2028 right now. I don't know if you agree or disagree. Do you see somebody where you're like, maybe? Don't say Newsom.
All right. So Gavin has an authenticity problem.
Right.
Right.
Everybody
talented
wants
in a lot of ways, though. He's talented, and more fearless than a lot of the rest of them. Right. He'll have Steve Bannon or Charlie on his podcast. He'll go on Fox News. He'll debate with DeSantis. But even if he was authentic, he looks inauthentic. Right.
Yep.
And he's not authentic, and he's a California progressive, and he'd have to kind of run to the middle, and I don't see that's how it's going to work. Josh Shapiro?
Yeah,
like, overly
maybe.
polished?
But I think the problem is he's Jewish, and there is a wing of the Democratic Party that, although many of them try to purport that it's actually about Zionism in Israel, they hate Jews. I think that was the calculus with why they chose not to have him as VP. What I had read was that Dearborn, Michigan, largely Muslim, would not vote for a ticket with a Jewish man on it. Nothing personal, very religious, and they could potentially lose a state, so they opted for Tim Walz instead. This is the problem with the hyper segmented Democratic Party. They know they need to pull to the center and agree with Trump on most of his policies, but then you're going to lose a lot of the progressives who want weird policies. Yeah.
I mean, speaking of authenticity, Waltz is such a great example of this, right? So they figured because he wears plaid shirts, he's going to appeal to men, in rural men. The guy can't handle a shotgun, right? He's sort of an urban person's ideal of a rural person. I mean, it was ridiculous and a complete doofus.
I think maybe that's what they wanted. It felt like when he did that bit where he was like, I eat tacos without seasoning on it. It's like, what are you talking about? Gordon Ramsay's a white guy. Emeril Lagasse bams his food. What do you mean you're not putting pepper on your tacos? That was ridiculously inauthentic. And then what they did with him, you see that bit where he said he could code talk to white guys?
Yeah.
It was funny. I was debating this liberal woman, and she mentioned code switching, and I said, "What is code switching?" And she's like, like in the black community, they speak one way, but then when they want to talk to white people, they code switch. And I was like, yeah, conservatives don't do that. Conservatives just talk the same way to everybody. Liberals don't get this because they change the way they talk depending on who they're talking to. That probably is their biggest inauthenticity problem. But let me switch it around. The Republicans got a lot of talent, but when Trump leaves, who do you think steps up?
Oh, I have no idea. These are totally speculative thoughts. Make of them what you will. But broadly speaking, right, successful presidency, JD has a huge advantage. Failed presidency, JD is going to have a hard time. So JD, I think, is hugely impressive, right? In the campaign, he went on basically any interview show. He never got cornered. He very often would corner his interviewer. There may be like 2 missteps the entire campaign. He's so smart and adept. He's very good at this. The question is, does when he's alone on the stage, does he have that performative ability? That is absolutely essential. This was a key X factor with Trump. So does JD have enough of it? I don't know. I think that's an open question, but I think it'll be a big field. You'll probably have DeSantis running. You'll have Cruz running. You'll have various other senators
Rubio
running.
probably.
What's that?
I'd imagine Rubio. Do you think Rubio?
Yeah, I think once you've done it, once you have that bug, it doesn't go away. So clearly, he's thinking about it. So it could be a big field, and I'm so bad at predicting these things. Even 2 months out, I hesitate to say anything about 28.
I actually have a lot of confidence in it being J.D. Vance, simply because in the Republican primary, with the DeSantis v. Trump crowd fighting each other, it was pretty brutal. A lot of the view is that DeSantis is a proven governor. He's got a great state. He's done tremendous things there, and he's got the decorum Trump does not. Whereas the Trump base thought DeSantis was too weak. He didn't have the charisma. The weird shoe thing was a fiasco. I look at J.D. Vance, and I feel like he combines both worlds. He's so far so good with the Trump administration. He's got political history. But you're right. If there is a successful presidency with Trump, J.D. Vance, I feel, could do even better, as he's got the decorum. He's got an authentic personality. He's got the policies. He seems to fit. I look at the Democrat side, and I'm like, they've got maybe a year to figure out who they're going to start putting up in these media positions to get ready for a primary, and I don't know how they muster it. I'm baffled. Maybe they're just cooked.
Yeah, so I can see JD. Works on paper, but again, you gotta go out and do it and prove it. And there's the added element of, so he's the clear successor to Trump. You just think, right, speaking at this hour. But does Trump think there's a successor to Trump? Right? Is Trump going to be kind of pissed at the idea that there's someone who thinks he's a successor to Trump? Now, I think JD is extremely deft, and he'll handle this relationship in the right way. But that's going to be very interesting.
Maybe we're wrong. There was who was it? Barbara F. Walter. Do you know who she is?
Mm-mm.
She's this former CIA analyst who's predicted civil war in the United States, and she's now saying that Trump will incite an international war so that he can force a third term for himself.
Yeah. I don't think he's very interested in international war.
Right.
All the things you can say about Trump, he's not a warmonger. So that I would say that's the first flaw in the theory. There's a couple others.
I would just say that if I was going to make a bet, I would not go with the historically unprecedented first, and probably just say the VP runs. But I suppose we'll see. I do appreciate you coming on to talk with me about all these issues. Where can people find out more from you or your organization?
Well, nationalreview.com, and also I should mention I'm the host of a podcast called The Editors, a roundtable we do twice a week, so you can find that wherever you listen to your podcast, The Editors.
Right on. Well, Rich, thanks so much for hanging out, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Take care. All right. Always fun. That was the National Review. They're great. It's funny, in conservative media, there's the MAGA populist type, and they'll get mad at the National Review for their opinions, and then, it is what it is. I think so long as you're not pretending that Joe Biden is competent during the Biden presidency, we can get along. I have no problem disagreeing with you guys, be it liberal, conservative, or otherwise, so long as you aren't lying to me. Come to me and tell me that, it's funny. I met this communist guy in Berkeley, and I said, he's wearing a mask. He's got a sickle and hammer. He's got literature. And I said, oh, so you're a communist? He's like, yeah. And then I said, what do you think about the Antifa people, the violent ones? He's like, man, it's really bad. It's bad for us. And I said, really? You think it's bad? And he goes, yeah, man. You're not supposed to be hurting people and attacking them. We're supposed to be working together. We're supposed to be united to make the world better. And I was like, yes, I agree. And he's like, they shouldn't be doing it. And I was like, okay, buddy. I shook his hand. I said, dude, you're allowed to be a communist. You're allowed to be wrong. Let's just not be violent about it. And there is the challenge, though, because I understand. They say, You can vote your way into communism, but you've got to shoot your way out. That's the saying, right? But I can respect a conversation with someone when we disagree on the function of an economy or government, so long as we agree to be honest and not mercilessly beat people in the streets. That's a bare minimum, right? My friends, I got no idea how the Democratic Party is going to muster up anything for 2028. Seriously, Gavin Newsom, it seems like he's the guy. I don't know who else has that level, but he ain't all that good. I suppose we'll see. My friends, smash that like button. Share the show with everyone you know. We're going to be gearing up to raid our friend Jeremy Hambley, who I believe is the quartering, who is getting ready to go live. Let me pull up his stream here as he is ramping things up and about to launch in about 2 minutes. Don't forget, like I said, to smash that like button. You can go to castbrew.com. Timcast IRL tonight. Drew Hernandez is going to be joining us. Don't miss it at 8 p.m. And I really do mean it, guys. The most important thing you can do is just sharing the content. Go to any big marketing company, any podcast, whatever. And there's two things you can't, there's one you can't fight. That's the algorithm. Why is Mr. Beast getting 100 million views? Simply, YouTube has decided to let him. That's it. The algorithm changes from time to time. And the fact that he's on the front page all the time means they like it. He's safe. He works with them. It's family friendly. What else could you ask for, right? The other big factor, though, that can break the algorithm is sharing content. We still have that power for now. Hopefully, we retain that power. I'll gear up this raid for all of you guys so you can go hang out with Jeremy over at the quartering for this Rumble afternoon lineup. Make sure you subscribe and download the Rumble app if you haven't, because that will send you notifications when the live show starts. So, download the Rumble app. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel on Rumble. And then when we go live, they actually tell you. It's pretty fantastic, right? Do the same for Timcast IRL. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.